be part of this session.
Okay.
Yeah, and especially if I look at what has been happening this morning, it sounds like, it has been quite exciting. Unfortunately, I
Yeah.
couldn't join. I had a couple of meetings. So
Yeah.
yeah, I hope we keep the momentum.
Good. Yeah, we will. We will. I also joined this morning as well and listening to Jennifer, listening to Ife from Nigeria Health Tracker, who has brought like AI to the power of to medical to the healthcare industry. It was just really interesting to watch all of these different women sharing their experience, sharing giving us nuggets, saying things like don't look at, I mean, turning your disadvantage to advantage, pulling other women along, which I know is what we're going to be talking
Yeah.
about in this session as well. And then of course, I think Sharon as well joined, I mean, the very early session to tell us the difference about having a mentor and having a sponsor. So a sponsor is someone that is advocating for you without your knowledge or with your knowledge in your current workspace. And then of course your mentor is what you need all the time, because your sponsor is most likely going to change as you move, into different
Yeah.
workspace. And that was good. That was nice to know. Then Aisha also said something, which is something that we always talk about at the ALX Nigeria community, which is there is entrepreneur and there's intrapreneur as well. Intrapreneur is someone excelling beautiful well and making all the money and and all of that in an industry, in a workspace. And of course, an entrepreneur is someone also making as much money in their own time and of course the boss of themselves. So it was very interesting to
Yeah.
listen to and join as well anyway. So yeah, I told you yesterday anyway, I'm looking forward to your session because I need it as well, and I'm sure that a lot of other women as well in this community doing that. I just wanted to post on our social media as well, like people need to join this session. Second session is on, so we'll give it one more minute and then we get started for the sake of time, because I see more people are joining as well.
Okay.
Okay, as you're joining, please let us know where you're joining us from. Okay. Let us know your name, the country, because again, ALX is across the continent, and it is nice to know where people are definitely joining from, because that would help us to validate that we are across the African continent. And then also, sorry, I'm just putting this up. And then also, if you're an ALX alumni, let us know. If you're currently on a program as well, let us know. And if you are, and then of course, if you are, maybe you just found the link on social media, like, let me go and find out what they do here. Let us know as well. I will definitely give you a group hug. Okay, so I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Shoma Bajde Joshua. I am the country marketing manager for ALX Nigeria, based out of Lagos, and I look after a hundred and thousands of the Nigerian community, because they are in thousands. This to blow up our trumpets a bit. Last year we graduated over 75,000 learners across Nigeria and across all of our programs. And of course, if you can imagine, we graduated 75,000. That means we had over 100, 430 or 50,000 people started our application across Nigeria. So it's a privilege to work for ALX Africa. And ALX Africa is on a mission to empower 2 million African youth across the continent and, make sure they get access to our programs and transform the African continent, either as an entrepreneur or as an intrapreneur, as I mentioned earlier. Our programs span, so I'm just going through this for anyone that's just joining us or you just want to talk about ALX and you need to know what to say. Every year, ALX Africa is in the business and on the mission to release and launch new programs that are very relevant to the current workspace or the future workspace as well. This year, we have launched our new creative tech program. So you can check it out at alxafrica.com and you can find out what you can do. So even as a woman, and which is one of the things that Dr. will be talking about, to be able to make sure that you're financial empowered, you also have to seek knowledge. At ALX, that is what we do. We make sure that you have access to all of our tech programs at your own space, even though there are milestones and timelines, right? But we make sure our programs are accessible for as little as $5 every month. And you can even write your exams and get certifications as well with that particular amount included. Some of the certifications that you get to write on the ALX program do cost on itself, $200 for the AWS cloud computing exams, and I think Salesforce exams about $250 as well. But guess what? With your $5 a month for the duration of your program, so you pay $5 every month for that amount. So whether you're in Kenya or you're in Nigeria or you're in Zimbabwe or you're in South Africa, you get to pay your local currency because we use the local gateway as well. So you have no excuse to have that multiple stream of income to be financially empowered. I'm not going to go too much because that is already Doctor's topic, which is wealth and women and wealth in Africa. I read a bit about Doctor's profile. And what I would suggest to our community is, please, as you enjoy and participate in all of this session, make sure you start forming an habit of going back to LinkedIn and taking out, just to show that you did listen, okay, to the guest, and the guest actually, you found their time valuable. Take out at least 2 or 3 nuggets, give them a shout out, appreciate them, and just say, thank you very much for, that session that I just attended. I learned 1, 2, 3, 4. Put it up on your LinkedIn, tag them so that they can find that, they can know that you found it valuable. And guess what? Your employer, your clients, your potential clients can also know that you're out there seeking for knowledge and participating in as many sessions that would help you, that would help your future, that will help your skills out as well. And you are, you're doing that for yourself. Now, Dr. Rufaro is a seasoned leader with I'm reading this from my LinkedIn profile, so see, I stalked that already. As soon as I knew that this was the person that was going to be moderating that room, I've gone to her profile, gone to her LinkedIn. It's an habit that I do because, that is just something that you have to do. Gone there, sent her, following her already because, again, it's a profile that interests me, right? She has over 25 years of experience in the financial services. So, of course, she's the woman for this particular conversation. And she has leveraged our intensive experts in financial services, local and international, strategic leadership as well. She has that entrepreneurship mindset, which you would hear, as I share a slide in a minute, and has worked in a number of African countries as well across the continent. And I won't tell you where she's currently is, but she will share that because now she's in Europe. And she has a passion to impact and make a difference because she has that very strong personal story, which you will all hear. So, like I said earlier, grab your water, your power bank, your pen, I don't know if you use your mini iPad, whichever it is, just grab a pen and grab a paper and be ready to take down a lot of notes and also be ready to ask very strong and targeted questions as well. So, Doctor, over to you. Tell us about yourself and I'll put up your PowerPoint, your presentation in a minute. Tell us about you.
Wow, to be honest, this is very interesting. All I can say is I think we have said a whole lot about me. But in summary, yeah, I am really a woman who grew up in rural areas, and I did not know much about money. That environment where women, when a girl child was not supported as much as the boy child. And I think for me, my only ticket to get out of the rural space was really working hard at school because I knew if I am going to operate just like my brothers, my father was going to prefer continuing school fees for my brothers as compared to myself. So knowing that if I don't do well, I wasn't gonna get out of the rural environment because I always used to imagine marrying a rural man, plowing the fields, having 10 kids. To be honest, it used to scare me. So all I can say to you is my journey was very inspired by not wanting to live the rural life, which my mother still does. I wanted to break that cycle. And if I look at where I am now, where I think you've summarized a lot of my career, but at this point in time, I now even work for a small island called Jersey, which is outside France. It's an international finance center where I really promote the financial services industry at a global level, from a rural environment into really an expert on finance, specifically very much in wealth management. So I think that is all I can say for now.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction, Ma. So the slides are ready. I'm handing the mic over to you. So just prompt me when you need to change the slides, and I'll be happy to do that. Take us away.
So I'm not gonna, because I really want us to discuss more rather than for me just to do the slide stuff. I think we can actually go straight into the second slide.
Yes.
So I was hoping this picture was gonna come out well. It was me speaking about really my life. I tend to be invited to speak a little bit about myself, and because at the end of the day, when you've got a platform, it's quite important to inspire others as well. But for me, the one thing that I tend to talk about, especially when it comes to wealth management, is very much around, if you just look at the journey of a woman. Remember, we take breaks during our careers to be able to really celebrate our femininity, which means we take a gap. When our husbands or partners are transferred or get a job in another country, wherever they are, we tend to leave our jobs and, become a housewife, maybe at times even for a while, to go join our partners, because otherwise the family is actually going to be broken. So career-wise, will never really be able to compete with men. And then the other thing as well is, we are very risk averse as women. Want to see our money next to us, whilst men promises men tend to promise us the world, even if they don't know. They appear to know, even if they don't know much, which I think we also need to learn from them. But in summary, because of, and we live longer as well. So we live longer. We are not, we are very risk averse, but also we take breaks in our careers, which means at 60, for example, even at 70, the money that they've accumulated, even if we had all the similar qualifications to a man, it's normally less than that of a man. But unfortunately, we live longer. And now the question is, how are we going to survive? So for me, this session is really about just giving you some tips of things that can happen in life that we need to always think about and really start planning as in now. So we can go to the next slide.
1 second. Okay.
So if I look at what I just decided to focus on 5 areas, and these areas apply to each and every one of us.
Yes.
And I think we've seen it, where some, the risks that we find in life is dying too soon. I think, it can be accident, it can be, a sudden disease. They just a whole lot. We know what happened in COVID. People also live very long. You live too long. I know that someone would say, but life is great. But if you live too long, it means you need to have enough money to actually sustain yourself as well. Losing the ability to earn an income, it can be, either you get a certain disease, it can be cancer, or you can be disabled. And you can actually have a very serious illness, which now requires enough money for you to be able to go through the treatment. And generally, taxes and inflation. I think we have got so many countries where we know if someone 10 years ago had put whatever the money that they had under the mattress, that man will be worth nothing as in today, So it's always about how do you manage in this environment. Let's go to the next slide. So just touching on dying too soon, which really happens. There is statistic that shows that only 10% of African women have life insurance. And what it means is, if you don't have life insurance, if something happens to you now, and let's say, you've got kids, and maybe your spouse, doesn't have a lot of money, it means those kids are really going to struggle, right? The other thing that we also know, and I can talk for myself, is if I look at like my mother, for example, she never worked, and because she never worked, if anything happens to her, what it also means is, from a finance perspective, if the husband is not working, it basically means, the family would struggle. And women are less likely to take out any life insurance. And I think, because at times they are just not exposed to some of these things. And I think for me, the biggest is the African cultures where, when it comes to inheritance, there's a tendency of women tend to be disinherited. And it's not every African country where women, even if, let's say, one grew up in a family where they've got a lot of assets, they would also allocate to women as well. So, and if one is disinherited and you pass away, it basically means there's really nothing to leave, especially for your kids. So in this case, it becomes quite important to say, how do you protect your financial future? Where you can get some insurance, write a will, because remember, when you pass on, if your wishes are not written down, it means people can do whatever they want to do. Even if, let's say, you had $100,000 in savings somewhere, that money, people can actually grab that money and do whatever they want with it. But if you've got a will, in most African countries, the regulatory landscape does respect a will that is written down, because it's a wish that was put together by the deceased. And also trusts are great, because you can put like your house, your property in trust. In that case, it means if, let's say, one has got kids, and especially when you've got underage kids, it means the trustees of that trust would actually manage all the finances that are in the trust to make sure that the child still continues to go to school, because they will be able to pay the fees from the trust. So it means you put your house, you put a whole lot of stuff in the trust, and it will be managed by trustees. And nobody will get a handle on assets of a trust. Can go to the next page. Living too long. Yeah, like I said earlier, generally women live longer than men. And what it means is, if you did not have enough savings, it means you end up depending on your kids. And I can talk for myself at this point in time. If I look at my father, he passed on about 2 years ago, and my mom is still alive. But my father used to work. He did not put money away for retirement. And the minute we went on to retirement, we as kids, you are 5 of us, we actually had to send money every month to take care of our parents. And yes, my father has passed on. We still have our mother. And every single month, we actually take turns to actually buy groceries. And even today, I was actually kind of, I don't want to say fight, but I was chatting to my other brother who's got the responsibility, who is very unreliable. And now the question is, if he doesn't send the money, one of us has to, send the money, because, our mother has to survive. And for me, this is where, as women who are working or hustling, it's quite important to say, how do I break this cycle of dependency? Because if we don't, what tends to happen is we take money from our kids, which they are supposed to save for their future, to look after us. We need to break that cycle in terms of making sure that today we live an affordable life, so that we can put some money aside for us to be able to take care of ourselves. So we need to think about, retirement funds. You can even start a business. Multiple incomes can always help, because you can hedge your risk. And yeah, find a property, because if you can invest in a property now, you know that during retirement, at least there's money that will come in every month to really be able to pay for your expenses. The third one I mentioned earlier about, the ability to earn an income. Over 90% of African women actually work in the informal sector. Like I said, let's say someone even graduated, the husband gets a job somewhere. We tend to follow the husband. We have to start at times even a small business, so that we can also contribute to the income, because you want to keep the family together. And in that case, which means a lot of women start businesses without even the expertise. So many of those businesses do not necessarily succeed as much as the times the main businesses. So being informal, it means they did not save enough. They actually don't have structures to be able to save like having, let's say, insurance for, let's say, a severe, severe illness, for example. If someone has got, let's say, breast cancer or something like that. So insurances do help, because when that event happens, that is going to pay out. You also need to start putting money aside for, that medical emergency. And yeah, so entrepreneurs, for me, my suggestion is really try to find other ways of making money, so that at least you've got a lump sum when something happens. Can go to the next slide, which again talks about serious illness. A serious illness can actually cost about maybe even $10,000, right? It can be $5,000 to $10,000. I was actually checking on some of the numbers this morning as well. And if you get such an illness, in many of the African countries where we do not necessarily have social security or free healthcare, it means the family is really going to struggle to raise the money. Yeah, and so if one can try to mitigate, and for me, I always say, go for your annual medical checkups, because many times we leave it too late when it could have been mitigated if someone was going, let's say, for annual checkups, especially if you look at like things like breast cancer. If it's picked up quite early, that then you don't have to pay so many high bills to feel better. If you can get health insurance, that would really help a lot. But again, that medical emergency, you need to really put money aside, because it can help you. And taxes and inflation, I've mentioned earlier about if you put your money under the mattress. What it basically means is, the money, especially in our local currencies, in dollars, that it kind of remains the same. But if, let's say, it's in our local currencies, we know what happens in a lot of African countries, because money, yeah, so money devaluates every year. And we tend to benchmark with the US dollar. And many countries operate with local currencies. And if we don't invest in assets that beat inflation, which means the money that you put under the mattress a year ago, it has got less value. You actually buy less items with it. So it becomes quite important to look at, where do you invest in shares, real estate. I know that, like in South Africa, they now have like what they call like tax-free savings. Take advantage of some of these benefits, because they can really help into the future. And especially if you're running a business, at times you might even consider maybe consulting a tax expert. And then my last slide, I just wanted, I didn't put any numbers there, but just a few tips that I want to leave you with, which are really some key money management tips. You need to always start with a budget, because many times, many of our pitfalls, they come because we don't start with a budget. Start with a budget and stick with it. And I normally use a budget which is kind of a 50-30-20 rule. So 50% is what you really need, whether it's rent, your bills, your transport, your grocery, those things you really need. 30% are the ones, clothing, stuff that you can do without, right? Clothing, maybe dining out, a couple of those other ones. And then 20%, it's really your savings and also your debt repayment. So when it comes to paying those debts, this is where we say pay yourself first. So for the 20% that I've commented on the investments and savings, make sure that they are automated, where maybe you've got debit orders, because you know that you are paying, you are consistent, you are putting that money aside, especially for those eventualities. And the other big one, live within your means, because the other challenge that we tend to do, we want to do what the Joneses are doing. And for me, I always say, if you really use that principle of 50-30-20, your 50% should say, this is what I need to pay for. And try to live within that. It doesn't matter even if your friend has now bought a bigger house, because the bottom line is, you don't know whether you're going to live long. You don't know whether you're going to die too young. And have you made those provisions? Because otherwise, it's your family that is going to suffer. You also need to avoid lifestyle inflation. And what I mean by lifestyle inflation is people tend to, like, when you get these annual increases, now I've got maybe a bigger job, it pays me maybe twice the amount of salary. Therefore, I now need to go buy a bigger car. I need to stay in a big. Do you necessarily need that? You also really need to look at, is it necessary? I still remember I used to drive a Land Rover at some point, and because I used to drive home once a year. But over time, I actually said, do I really need a Land Rover to drive in town where, for my meetings is within maybe 10-kilometer range most of the times? This is a 3-liter car and I go home once a year. So if one goes home once a year, I can even hire a big car for driving home that once a year. But at least during the year, I can actually save money. So if I look at right now, I drive a Mini and I am very happy because most of my trips home now, I fly home. But whenever I'm around, I need a small car. I don't. Yeah. So you do not necessarily have to compete with your friends, and also invest early if you can. And the last one is to manage and eliminate bad debt. And what I mean by manage bad debt is, let's say you have got a credit card or you've got a home loan. A home loan, you find that the interest rate is much lower, and a home loan is actually good debt as compared to a credit card. You find people, they go buy clothes, using a credit card. Interest rates can be about 40% in a year. They can go to 40%, they can go to 45%. So you are really wasting money. So you really need to always clear your bad debts and then focus on good debt. And I think on that note, I just want to say, to be honest with you, money management, it really starts with the way you think and really stopping that instant gratification. That's what you need to manage. The more you manage your money, the more you're going to live happier into the future. And I think on this note, I'm just going to stop so that if there are any questions, I didn't want to talk too much. And people can ask, and I can, maybe share some examples from my side as well.
Thank you very, very much. You kept it very simple, short, simple, straight to the point as well. I took a few notes, and I think I'll just go through the notes as well. So, guys, please, you can send your questions in the comment section. Don't be shy. Don't. I'll read them all out. I can see them. But I'll just run through my notes that I took anyway. And it was, of course, creating a budget and sticking. It was good that you said that word, sticking, because I bet we can all create a budget. Sticking to that budget that is where the consistency is. Stick it to the budget. Because I find myself every year, I'm like, okay, sure, we're sticking to this budget, and I do it, and then the month come January, I'm great. February, March, then it's Easter, then someone is getting married. As a Nigerian girl, please, any Nigerian in the house, please, don't leave me hanging. Someone is getting married, you're doing ashwebi, we all have to wear the same attire. We might be in debt, and that's a Nigerian thing, God help us. We might be in so much debt, but no, we will buy that family attire because we all want to look good, we all want to look fly. Every Nigerian girl or guy can be so broke, but they would definitely be looking good on a Saturday at the wedding. And that is why, even for me personally, I don't do them because the pressure is just too much. Yeah. And by the time you sit down and do that calculation, it's ridiculous. So you said create a budget and stick with it, God help us and me as well. And then, of course, you reiterated the 50, 20, 30 rule. And I'm going to come back to that because I actually have a question around that. And then you said 50% is really what you need monthly to survive. And the 30% are stuff that you can actually do without. And then your 20% should be your saving, your saving and clear your debt. And then one of the other key things that you said as well was fitting into your current lifestyle, which you then gave a very relatable example, which I can relate to as well, which is switching your cars. So if you live somewhere that is very close and central to where you work or where you have your meeting, do you just want to hop on the train more? Or if you're someone that you don't go out that much, do you really need to be in the two car? Do you really need to be in the two cars family household? Let me give you an example of a typical Nigerian family. Typical Nigerian family, and again, based on the socio-economical factors, it's not for everyone, right? You'll find a typical Nigerian family that would have the husband would have a car, the wife will have a car, the children for their school runs would have a car. So you find out in an household, they have 3 cars, because then you start hearing all sort of old conveniency, but then people forget, just like you said, the car will wear out, the car would need fixing, you'd need to fuel 3 cars and all of that. And that was why I really like the example that you gave, which is fitting into your current lifestyle. And I wanted to just share this from my experience. So there was a time when my other half had to go to another state to go and work. So of course we're not in the same states, which was another example that you gave. You see, that's why I told you yesterday, there's so many relatable things that we have, right? And we were a 2-family household. And at that point, where it was going to is work was going to pay fully, because of the level that it was at, was going to pay fully for his flat, his transport and car and everything. So we just sat down and said, there's no need to have having 2 cars. You're barely going to be in Lagos. You're barely going to be driving that car. When you are around, we can have a very workable schedule that would allow that 1 car to fit both of us. And that's what we did. We literally just sold this car and we had a 1 car. And that's why I liked what you said, fitting yourself into your current lifestyle as well. So it looked like at some point to his family, the typical African parents, oh my God, my son doesn't have a car. Is he broke? Is he poor? Is she taking all his money? Oh my God, she's stressing him financially. So I think that I would like you to be able to, if you have any relatable life experience as well, where, I mean, you did share, where you can also share where that has happened, because I think more women need to hear that, because sometimes we also want to feel like, oh, because now I'm single, I want to look like I'm enjoying my life. But then we forget that you still have a longer lifespan to live, and that's what you shared. And you said, start saving early. And I'm going to come back to that one. But first, can you share any other experience, maybe while growing up or in your current life, where you have had to do several cutting just to fit into where you are?
Okay. So, still on the car issue, I think I'll just do a few seconds on it. What was very interesting was, like I said, I work for Jersey Finance, Jersey, a small island outside France. At the end of last year, I hosted some dinners, and I had some government representatives that came. And I'm driving them in my Mini. And for me, I'm very comfortable with my car. And I think let's not live life for other people and what they are going to think. This is what I can afford, and this is my life. And I think it's really quite important to be very confident of who you are and where you want to be, because you are the one who's going to live that life. So don't worry about what other people say. So in summer, I used to even give them a lift in my Mini anyway. And yeah, that is what it was. Anyway, going back to some other examples, when I was married, we had 3 kids, 2 daughters and a son. The son was the last one. And husband was very open. We used to tell the daughters to say, you guys, you know what, you're going to be married. I am not going to leave any money for you. Don't expect anything from me. And the son, who was the last one, who was kind of this blue-eyed, whatever, if I look at where he is now, he hasn't done anything that is successful. But the daughters, like the other one is in Malta, she's doing very well. The other one, she's a developer, also doing really quite well. But the father was very clear, despite our generation where I thought, you know what, we are a bit more modern, where, my son, when you finish school, high school, I'm going to buy you a car. Unfortunately, he didn't get the car anyway because he just didn't pass to the level that the father. But what I'm just saying is those traditions do exist. And we need to acknowledge that and say, you know what, because you might be in that same situation, what is it that you can do differently, right? If I look at like my house where I am, the place where I am, I remember my son the other day went to visit one of my business partners. She's got a very big, lush house, those 2 floors, I think 4 or 5 bedrooms, whatever they are. And my son said to me, this house is very nice. Would you like to? And I said, to be honest, I don't feel anything for this house. It's a beautiful house for them, not for me. For me, I have started to really look at what is enough for me. I think the more I use the word enough, the more I'm very comfortable in my skin, the way I dress, the car that I drive, the place that I live in. And I think it needs to start there. But as long as you're not comfortable with who you are and the lifestyle that you are living, the more you tend to live beyond your means. So going back to my 50%, if you are very if you are very honest with yourself, you say, if I'm earning, let's say, $10,000 a month, I'm just giving as an example, 10,000, which means my expenses, my mandatory expenses need to be within 5,000. And make sure, because the more you do that, the more it really gives you an idea of what house are you supposed to live in, what car, because they need to fit within the 5,000. As long as you find yourself going beyond that, it means you are living beyond your means. So I think if you use it as a test, it can really help to guide you as you walk through life and say, yes, my friend is earning 20,000, I earn 10,000. So I need to 50% of what I earn should pay for all my my compulsory expenses every month. It helps you to really say what type of life you need to live.
Thank you. So thank you very much for that, Doctor. And again, I'm glad that you talked on that. Guys, please send in your questions. Let us know. I mean, let me and Doctor know. And so if you have any questions for Doctor, please put it in the chat window, and then I'll read it out. So I want to go back to this 50-20-30 split. Me, I'm of the opinion, right? In the African world that we are today, especially for West Africa, I don't even think that it should be 30%. That 30% should never even exist, in my own opinion. And I think that if you're going to half your salary, I already think that's even a lot. If you're going to half your salary already to fit into what you need, me, Shion, and then Doctor, you can tell me your opinion around that. I know that's the standard, like that is the standard and that is the template and whatever. But I think that 50% should cover everything you need, your good debt, the stuff you need, your miscellaneous should all fit into your 50%. Especially if you're even a bit, older and you've really not taken you've not started saving at a younger age, like maybe 18 or 20. Because by the time you're doing 50% on what you need, people then almost go like, oh, that means that I have extra and then I can do X as Y. Because if I was to take that, that leaf that you're given, be enough. Try and fit. Look at how long more you have in life. If by the time you're thinking of your medical bills, your pension and all of that, that should fit into your 50%. I feel like, in my opinion, and you can correct me or throw some more insight, should we really do that 30%? Because that 30%, imagine if that's added to your savings or your stock or your exchange or properties. Like, that's good. What more stuff do you need that doesn't fit into your 50%?
No, because you want to go and look beautiful at that wedding. Remember, there are going to be 5 weddings. You know what? I did attend one wedding in Nigeria, I must say. And because I stayed in Nigeria for about 2 years. And my colleagues, they went to buy an attire for me. I was taken to do makeup on the day. To be honest, I've got pictures where at times when I look at them, I don't even believe that it's me, because I really looked out of this world. It was more like a Miss Whoever. But anyway, so because you need to look beautiful and you still want to feel like, you are good enough. So I do understand. So for me, the 50-30-20 is just a benchmark, depending on your circumstances, but in summary, you need to have a percentage that you say, this is the percentage for my fit, and that determines the type of life that you live. And sorry, and I just saw a certain question here that is commenting about, when how do you manage people who ask you for money? To be honest with you, I've learned to say no. I think there's a word that is called no that exists. You need to find ways of how to say no, because you can still say no in a very good way. You can find, you can even say, I'm saving for whatever, I bought land, or I'm buying land, I'm paying school fees. I know that it feels like I'm teaching you to lie, but in summary, you need to learn to say no. That word does exist. Otherwise, it was not going to be in our vocabulary. Because otherwise, if you become a yes person, I know that because I also do financial coaching to some executives. And this other person was saying to me, she was commenting about some of the loans that she took for other people because they wanted to do certain things, relatives. And I said, but you decided to put yourself in that situation because you just could not say no. And now you are struggling to balance, even kids going to school because you took unnecessary loans. You need to really be very clear. And what you need to remember with the relatives, know that if you give money, the chances of it coming back is going to be zero anyway. So it's your decision. But the word no does exist.
Thank you very much for answering that question. Very sharp in 20 seconds. Thank you very much for this time. And thank you very much for everyone for asking the questions as well. Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you.